Hello and welcome to week 2 of technical writing. I'm Professor Ellis, and I hope that you're all doing well. I think we're got the semester off to a pretty good start. The key now is to keep the momentum moving forward with the projects that we're currently working on as we begin to dovetail next week into the next set of projects in the class, which we'll talk about a little bit during today's lecture. But throughout, one thing I just want to throw out there to remind you all, keep in mind if anything comes up during the semester that you need to reach out to me, please don't hesitate to do so. My email address is jellis@citytech.cuny.edu, so you can always email me. I have my office hours on Wednesdays from 3 until 5. The link to the Google Hangout where I have my virtual office hours is on the Syllabus on our Open Lab site. So it should be easy to find. You click the link. And then you join the Hangout and you'll see me there. But if you can't meet during those times, remember you can also send me an email letting me know what your availability is for like a week. And then I'll try to find a time in my schedule that syncs with yours, and then we'll get together and I'll give you a link either to the Google Hangout, or we'll meet on Zoom, or we'll find some way to touch base so I can help you with the class or whatever you have going on related to the class. Also, before we get started today, just want to remind you, you ought to be taking notes as you're listening to the lecture. As I mentioned before, the Cornell note-taking method is my preferred method of note-taking. I think it's a great way to organize your notes, but also make your notes as useful as possible. This is something that's beneficial for you, I think, not just in our class, but in any of the classes you might be taking or once you get into the workplace. And again, with the Cornell method, which you can see here on the screen right now, you take your sheet of paper and you divide it into 3 parts. You have that Q column over on the left, and that's where you put your Q words, keywords, important topics that are being discussed. Over on the right-hand side, that's your note-taking column. That's where what you traditionally think of as your notes, where you're putting all the details down. But whatever you put over here on the right should link up and connect to some of those keywords over in the Q column on the left. And then finally, once you're through with the lecture, you should look back at your notes, and at the bottom, you're going to reserve the bottom strip of space to write a summary about what is in that page of notes. That way it helps not only refresh your memory about what you've taken notes on, but it also serves as an index so that you can quickly flip through your notes and you can just look down at those summaries and you'll be able to very quickly find what you're looking for, more so than if you just have like pages and pages and pages of like big blocks of text that you've written down in your notebook. So this is a way to, I think, take notes in a smarter way, so that even though it does require a little work to set up and to get used to, in the long term, it's something that will serve you in a very beneficial way to being more effective at note-taking, learning more from your notes, and also helping your notes help you, like when you study for exams and your other classes, or simply being able to refer to something that you might have made notes on weeks previously in a class. So be making notes as you're listening to the lecture. And I guess connected to that, keep in mind as well that whenever you're listening to this lecture, you want to minimize any kind of distractions that you've got going on around you as much as humanly possible anyways. And the same is true for any of your other classes. Because if you're trying to cut through all the noise that might be going on around you, it requires more cognitive load on your brain to be able to filter out all these distractions from what you're trying to accomplish, which is to engage in the class, learn from the lecture, do the work that's being asked of you. So you do want to try to be in as distraction-free a zone as possible. You want to be able to hear, obviously, the things that I'm having to say. The same is true for your other classes. Making notes so you remain engaged or being an active learner in what you're participating in. These are things that I hope over the long term will increase the success that you'll have in this class. And of course, if you ever have like any questions or particular challenges with this, This is another reason to talk to me throughout the semester, whether it be at office hours or via email or by an appointment. because I want to make sure you're all successful in this class. And one of the best surefire ways to do that is maintaining engagement. And if anything is pulling you away from that engagement, and you're having trouble, like you're dealing with what that is, that's the time to reach out to me, and so I can try to troubleshoot with you. We can work together in order to find a way to give you a path forward. So that's note-taking stuff. So let's see what else we got to do this week. Discuss note-taking. We're going to review some syllabus stuff just to make sure everybody's on the same page. We do want to talk a little bit about what technical writing is. You're probably wondering like what the hell it is that we're going to be doing in this class besides the assignments. We're going to continue working on the 500-word summary, but today I'll talk specifically about turning your reverse outline that you worked on for this week. That hopefully you're winding that up. I know a lot of you turned those in before today, and I'm proud of you for doing that. For those of you that are still wrapping it up, you still got a little bit of time. I'll start checking those off, before I have off or during my office hours on Wednesday from 3 to 5. But even if you were to miss something like that, still get it in after the date. Make sure you just send me an email saying, hey, Professor Ellis, I got this thing turned in late. That way I know to go back, because if I've already checked off everybody's, I'm not going to be going back and looking for something that may not be there. So always let me know if you do turn in something late, so that I can go back and give you some credit for that. But for today's continuance on the 500-word summary, we'll be talking about turning it into a draft. We'll talk about the APA reference, and we'll also talk about quotes and citations. And then finally, we'll discuss your homework, the things that you'll be preparing before next week's class. All right, so with that in mind, review syllabus. Relating to the syllabus, before I get into that, I just want to remind you all to make sure that you are in the right place for where we are in Open Lab. So even though, at least right now, I'm continuing to make these lectures for both of my technical writing classes, in the future I may be switching things up depending on what the needs of each individual class are. But suffice for right now, one lecture, more time I can devote to getting back to you all on the work that you're doing. But make sure that as far as where you're turning in your work, that you're in the right place on Open Lab. So right here is the OL83 section. That's the one that has the avatar of the red-armed individual pressing the button on the levitating laptop. So that's OL83. Make sure that underneath here you'll see a link for Join Now. After you've logged into Open Lab, you click Join Now, and then that'll put you into the class. Almost everybody is joined, so that's great. For the other section, that's OL88, you guys are the figure drawn on the red background pointing off to the side. So make sure that you're seeing that avatar and you click Join Now for that section. Make sure that if you're in OL83, you're in that section on Open Lab. If you're in OL88, that you're in this section on Open Lab. That way you'll be in the right place, turning in your work, and I'll be seeing it and giving you the credit for it. But I mean, obviously, if I catch somebody that's in the wrong section, I'll reach out to you individually. But let's try not to do that to save some extra technical communication via our email, right? And again, almost everybody's joined, so that's really super. That means we're on track for the semester. Now, with the syllabus, and this is true for both sections, over on the left-hand side, you should see a link for syllabus, so you click on that. Both syllabi are exactly the same except for the section number. That link for my weekly office hours, Google Hangouts, is right there. That's the same for all of my classes, both you guys as well as my science fiction class. So occasionally you might join the Hangout for my office hours, and I may already be speaking with a student, in which case just kind of hang out. You're welcome to listen, unless it's something sensitive, in which case I may ask you to step out for a minute. But normally you can just sit there and listen. You might learn something from what I'm talking about with the other student. Once I'm done with that student, I can then focus on you. So definitely please take advantage of that. Now, the things I wanted to point out today is just a reminder. Make sure you check out the grade distribution so you know what assignments count how much towards your final grade in the class. The main things that we're doing right now are the weekly writing assignments and the individual 500-word summary. So for like last week's weekly writing assignment, you had sent me that email of introduction. Those there's a lot of you, so it's taking me a little while to get back to everyone on that, but I will. And that'll constitute part of that grade. For this week, I'm going to have a writing assignment for you to do, a short writing assignment that you're going to post as a comment on OpenLab, and I'll show you that later at the end of the lecture. The other thing that we got going on is this 500-word summary. For this last week, some of the homework involved with that, you found an article and you created a reverse outline of each paragraph in that article. And that's going to help you because today we're going to talk about turning that into your draft of the 500-word summary, in which you're summarizing this longer technical or scientific article that you found either through Ieee Explorer or through Academic Search Complete. So that's what we got going on right now. And also, just to remind you, if you look at the bottom of our syllabus, we have the schedule. And most folks, I think, you did take a look at the Laura Portwood-Stacer article, How to Email Your Professor Without Being Annoying AF, which I appreciate. Got a lot of really great emails from folks. But one thing I will just mention so that everybody is aware of this, make sure that when you are sending me an email, even when it's not an assignment, make sure that, in the subject line, let me know what the email is about. So, and also which section and class you're in, because I'm teaching 3 classes right now, 2 different classes, 3 different sections. So make sure you let me know the course and the section number you're in, and maybe something about what you're writing about. If you need help, just say, I need help. That's fine. But if it's something even more specific, you can mention that in the subject line, along with the course number and your section number. And then in the body of your email, remember you should always give a salutation, Dear Professor Ellis, Hi Professor Ellis, Hey Professor Ellis. All those are fine. Then write the body of your email, like what you are writing about, what you're needing help with, what do you want to point out, whatever that might be. And then at the bottom, make sure you remember to sign your name. Because I know with some folks, the name that they're using on their email, for a variety of reasons, especially if you're using an email client on a mobile phone rather than the website, the name may not always match who you are, because you might use a pseudonym or a screen name or just a made-up word. So make sure you sign with the name that you have in the class, so I know who you are, because it's a lot more difficult with being able to remember my students and interact with you in a way as much as I would like to as when we were meeting in person. Because obviously when we're meeting in person, I know your face. I can see you in the hallway. I can say hello when I pass you walking around. But when we're meeting virtually, asynchronously, online, obviously it makes it a lot more challenging for me to get to know each of you. So the more information you can give me every time we interact, the easier it is for me to know who you are and to provide as much feedback as I can on whatever problem, whatever question you might have. And also you can think of it in terms of technical communication, which we'll discuss today, is that email itself is a form of technical writing. And part of technical writing is being able to help others do the things that they need to do. One of the things I need to do is be able to help you as efficiently and as expertly as possible. And you can help me by letting me know who you are, what section you're in, all these things in the email itself. I will say, connected to that, for some reason, a couple of students across the sections, for an unknown reason, sent me an email with their writing attached as a Word doc file, which I thought I've seen before, and it struck me as odd before, and it does again now. Please don't do that whenever you're writing me a message. You need to put your message into the body of the email. Salutation, what you're writing about, and then sign it at the bottom. Of course, you can attach things to the email after you've done that, but the attachment itself should not have the message that you're writing to someone as the attachment. Because one of the big problems with that, especially today, everyone is very hyper aware of different scams and schemes that people will use to try to hack a computer or get some information from someone that can compromise their security online. And receiving an email that has no subject, has no message, and only has an attachment, well, I mean, honestly, that's weird. And I'm very loath to mess with those types of emails. Because for a variety of reasons, City Tech faculty are ripe targets for different types of scams that try to infiltrate our network at school. So make sure that you yourself, as a communicator, use email the way that people are expecting you to in a professional way. Most of you are, and again, there's only a couple folks I just want to give a shout out to about this, is that write out your emails, put something in the subject line, give a salutation, write your body, sign your name at the bottom, so that I know who this is coming from, what it's about, and then you can attach whatever file you need to send me for an assignment or whatever you want me to look at. If it's something related to the class, or maybe not an assignment, because like later on in the semester I'll mention like offering help for like resumes, job application letters, things like that, which I've helped students with in the past. Also, looking at this, returning to the syllabus, if we look down, week 2 is where we're at. Lecture Continue 500 Words Summary. This week I'll be assigning teams for peer review and collaborative projects, and then due by next week, weekly writing assignment posted to Open Lab and draft of your 500 word summary, which that'll be the homework stuff that I talk about at the end of today's class. The assigned teams, that'll be something I send to you all by email probably closer to next Wednesday, because I need to review everyone's emails that you've sent me. So again, if you haven't sent that introductory email to me yet, make sure you get that to me with your availability to work with others. And what I'll do is try to match folks up as much as possible. But again, I can't guarantee that's going to work out. And again, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. It's just something I'm going to try to do to help out the teams as much as possible. But the reality is, not just in our class, but I think in the workplace right now, is you will be called on to work with people that have wildly different schedules than you might have. And it's good to get in the practice of dealing with that as much as possible within the safety of our class. So we'll see how it all pans out, but I'll be sending those emails to each of the teams so everyone knows who they're going to be working with, because that's going to come into play for the weekly part of the homework next week, which will be peer review feedback on your team's 500 word summary drafts. And so you need to know who you're going to be doing peer review feedback with, and those people will also be who you're doing the collaborative work with in the second half of the semester. So I figured getting you started now with that team will give you some time to get to know one another and try to negotiate and work out the best ways to communicate with one another, so that by the time we get to the collaborative projects, you will already be in sync and you'll be able to work together in an even easier, more fluid way than if I were to tell you, just right before the project begins, this is who you're working with. So that's the reasoning behind that, but also letting you know where we are in the semester just starting off. All right, so that's syllabus stuff. So what is technical writing? So what I thought I'd do is work with you to take a look at this page on the STC's website. And you can see the URL at the top. It's stc.org. This is the Society for Technical Communication. This is the professional organization for technical writers and other types of technical communicators. So they are the ones that form a network for all these different workers, for all these different businesses that are involved in technical writing and technical communication, to not just define like what it is, which is what we'll be looking at, but also to offer certifications, to offer continuing learning opportunities, and also to offer networking to help people find jobs, throughout their career, whether it's directly connected to technical writing or if technical writing is some aspect of the work that you might be doing. So let's take a look at how they define technical communication, and then I'll also mention some other characteristics that I want you to be aware of. So even though these are things that you're going to be seeing on the screen, what I would suggest doing is jotting them down in your notes, again using your Q column over on the left, maybe definition, technical communication, and then over on the right is where you can start adding in some of these details. And then after we work through this page, we'll take a look at some other examples that you will hear me talk about that you can then add to your notebook, just to be thinking about the types of communication that are involved in technical writing. So they're saying here, defining technical communication. Technical communication is a broad field and includes any form of communication that exhibits one or more of the following characteristics. So they have 3 points here. And this can include one or more of these characteristics. So 1, communicating about technical or specialized topics, such as computer applications, medical procedures, or environmental regulations. Right now, what we're doing with the 500-word summary is we're looking at these things that are about technical or specialized topics, right? Because you found a scientific or technical article, which is a form of technical writing, and the summarization that you're creating based on that is itself about technical or specialized topics. So you're doing technical writing as well. Second one, communicating by using technology, such as web pages, help files, or social media sites. So any type of communication that uses technology, whether it be websites, social media, different types of messaging apps, all of these are also a form of technical communication or technical writing, because you're using technology to do the communicating, to do the writing. And this is something you'll also be engaged in throughout the semester, especially with the way that you turn in assignments, where some things you've sent me by email already. You'll be writing comments on our Open Lab site, and whenever you begin turning in your larger projects like the 500-word summary, you'll be writing posts on our Open Lab site. So different types of writing that you're going to be doing involving different types of digital technology. And then third, providing instructions about how to do something, regardless of how technical the task is, or even if technology is used to create or distribute that communication. So any type of instructions are also a form of technical communication. You'll be working on your own set of instructions for the third individual project in the class, and your homework that I'm going to give you in this week's weekly writing assignment is going to be a type of instructions that you're going to write based on how you found the article you selected for the 500-word summary. And I want to introduce this now to let you just kind of work over it a little bit in your mind on a very low stakes assignment before we get to that much bigger project that's obviously going to count for more of your grade than just a weekly writing assignment. It's good to kind of work out how these things work, as well as give you an opportunity to be thinking about them in advance, to prime yourself with this type of work that we're going to be doing. They continue, the value that technical communicators deliver is twofold. They make information more usable and accessible to those who need that information. And in doing so, they advance the goals of the companies or organizations that employ them. I think this is really important to think about, that with any kind of technical communication, technical writing, is that the information that you're providing is offering it in a way that's more usable and accessible to others. And by doing that, you're helping your company, maybe helping a client. you're essentially helping others do their work or make choices that they need to make based on that information that you're providing them. And so this is why even like an email is a form of technical writing, not just because it involves technology, but oftentimes we're sending emails to tell someone like information they need to do their job, or to fulfill a particular task, or to help them along some process that you may be collaborating on with them. So again, it's making information more usable and accessible to those that need that information. And again, in doing so, advance the goals of the companies or organizations that employ them. The following examples illustrate the value of the products technical communicators produce or the services they provide. So they give a number of different examples here. We can go through some. Software instructions help users be more successful on their own, improving how easily those products gain acceptance into the marketplace and reducing costs to support them. So this is like, I think, something that should be obvious to all of us that know how to read the manual, right? Is that we're able to use the manual that came with our software, whether that manual is printed or whether it's something we're reading on the computer screen, maybe with a whatever help reader that's built into the software or the operating system, or on a website that's provided by the company that made the software, to solve whatever problem we're having, whether it be like how to do something, how to fix it, how to troubleshoot it. By having that information available to us as users, it reduces their own overhead in terms of how much support they need to provide. What if they didn't give us any of that help information? Then the only way that we could try to fix a problem, if we couldn't figure it out on our own, is we have to call them, right? And so that makes more of a burden on them, which is going to increase their costs. If their costs go up, they pass that on to who? Us, the customer, because then we're obviously having to pay for it. And so if by providing this stuff, it helps them help us in a way. So this is something I think is kind of like a win-win attitude that we can see about how technical communication operates in some ways. Next one, medical instructions help patients and care providers manage a patient's treatment, improving the health of the patient while reducing costs and risk associated with incorrect care. And this is something that I think has taken a while to get to where it is, but it's far more advanced today than it was, say, maybe 20, 30, 50 years ago, in terms of how much information, medical information, is made available to patients. Whenever we go to the pharmacy, we get printouts with our medicines that not only show how to use it, but give all the warnings about different side effects, other types of drugs or supplements you shouldn't take with that medicine, and also advice on how to ameliorate maybe even some of the side effects. So this is a substantial improvement, I think, on simply having to rely on maybe asking someone, whether it be the pharmacist or your doctor, to provide this, what is otherwise a tremendous amount of information that's printed out on these documents. And there's also a wealth of information on the drug makers' websites and on other vetted websites. Vetted, meaning that they are evaluated by professionals. So like with WebMD, you see like the different listings of information about diseases and about drugs are almost universally signed off by a doctor. You'll see a name of a doctor who signed off on that information saying this is right, this is accurate. Whereas you should be weary of going to like different rando websites that offer medical information where there isn't that kind of vetting taking place. They provide a lot of information, but the problem then is this accurate information? And so that's something where we have to use our own digital literacy to evaluate that source. And that's something that we gain also as users of information, right? That it's not just about like technical writing and technical communication. It's only about projecting writing out, the more you do this kind of work, you also become a lot more savvy in how to read that technical communication and technical writing of others, to evaluate it, not just in terms of like its validity, but also in terms of who is the person or persons that are behind writing it and whether you can trust them or not. Let's see. Another one down here, training programs provide people with new or improved skills, making them more employable and their organizations and products more efficient and safe. This is a great one I'll just mention to you guys to be thinking about, is that it's important for you all to be thinking about your careers, not just in terms of that degree that you're getting, because I mean obviously you're getting a degree that's going to essentially is a membership card to get different types of work. But there's a lot of other people that are getting that same type of membership card when they get their degree from City Tech or somewhere else. And so it falls onto you, in order to maintain gainful employment, to be able to move through your career in a satisfying and productive way, not just to rely on that degree and what you've learned for this limited time that you're at City Tech, but that while you're still here, you should be using whatever resources we have to enrich your education so that you can show how you're more knowledgeable than anyone else. This is one of the reasons why in my classes I really press on students to use the library databases, because that's a tremendous resource that you have access to that no one else has access to unless they're paying a tremendous amount of money to have that kind of access. But as a student, you have that access for free. So use those resources, because those resources are not things you're going to find on a rando website just through a Google search. But also these training programs they mention here, some offered by STC and others provided by IEEE and a lot of other different organizations, are things you'll want to kind of keep your ear to the ground on, to know when they might be coming up, to maintain a network with other folks that are in your field so that they may tell you when these things come along, so that you are continually learning throughout your career, always getting new certifications, being able to build up your resume in a way that shows you can do more than what you're capable of doing when you first graduate from City Tech. This helps you maintain employment, because like if you get laid off, you need to be able to show very quickly you're qualified for another position that may come up at some other organization, other business, or at the same time being able to transition from one career into another, maybe parallel or tangential career track. And again, this comes down to your participation in this lifelong learning. But those types of learning things, whether you're doing them in the workplace and you're creating them yourself or participating in them, are types of technical communication, technical writing. I'll let you guys read over the rest of these. You can find this list, just to show you, if you go to stc.org, so I'm at their website, just mouse over About STC, and then if I can get my mouse to work, under the profession, you'll see the link, Defining Technical Communication. And then finally, I'll just list through these. The following is a partial list of the different jobs within technical communication: technical writers and editors, indexers, information architects, instructional designers, technical illustrators, globalization and localization specialists, usability and human factors professionals, visual designers, web designers and developers, teachers and researchers of technical communication, that's like me, trainers and e-learning developers. These types of roles are actually clearly defined as job titles, but what you yourself might find is you're having to do or being called upon to do the same kind of work in your job. This is something that I think is an increasing reality of work today, is that we all have to wear a lot more hats than folks might have had to wear, like say 50 years ago in the workplace. This is because there's more competition for jobs, It's also because businesses are wanting to streamline and make their payroll essentially more efficient. They want to extract more labor from each of us in order to lower their head count and lower how much they're having to pay out for people doing different type of job roles. So it's important, again, to learn as much as you can, because even though I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong the way things are, but the reality is, the pragmatism of the situation is that you need to be prepared to show how you can do more than just the one thing that you're training to do in your major, in order to be a very robust potential employer at these places. And then finally, they write here, what all technical communicators have in common is a user-centered approach. When you say user-centered, that means who you're writing the communication for, who's going to read it. What all technical communicators have in common is a user-centered approach to providing the right information in the right way at the right time to make someone's life easier and more productive. And so this type of work that we're going to be exploring this semester is attempting to do that in different ways through the different types of deliverables, the projects, the documents that you're making might be called upon whenever you're in the workplace. And it's, again, providing the right information in the right way at the right time to make someone's life easier and more productive. So these are things I want you to you kind of keep in the back of your mind as we're going through the semester. Now, some other things that I just wanted to throw out there to be thinking about as far as technical writing is concerned. And this is things that you can list out in your notes, maybe for a key word. You can say characteristics of technical writing, and then you can list them over on the right. First off, it serves practical purposes. Technical writing isn't writing just for writing's sake. It always serves some kind of purpose, whether it be to tell someone to do something, to try to convince someone to do something, to provide information someone needs to do their job, to collaborate with others on a writing project. All of it's for some kind of practical purpose. Another thing to keep in mind is it must satisfy different readers in a single communication. This is a really key point with any kind of writing we do, is that you may only get one shot at the communication that you're writing, whether it be an email or whether it be a document, whether it be a proposal maybe, in which case you're trying with that one communication to reach a number of different people that have maybe different backgrounds, that have different maybe power in the organization, decision-making power in the organization that you're involved in. And so you have to accommodate these different readers in the single communication that you're making. Say for a proposal, for example, you can't write 12 proposals for one thing to meet the needs of these 12 different people. You need to make the one proposal help each of those 12 people in different ways in the way that you've crafted it. It takes a lot of work and practice to do that, but in the workplace, especially in what we do in our class, will help you along that path. But in the workplace in particular, you'll get a lot of experience with this. It also addresses international and multicultural audiences, meaning that we're increasingly finding a need for the different communications that we might be producing to be applicable, not just within, the company that you work for is based in the United States, but they may have customers in a lot of different places in the world. And it's not just a matter of translating those words that you've written for those audiences. There may be other cultural concerns about color schemes that you use in the document, how those things get translated. There may be idioms that get lost in translation that need to be spelled out. There's a lot of different things that have to be accommodated in your deliverables to reach these different audiences. Technical writing also uses distinctive types of communication. And these are the documents that we're going to be working on this semester, such as memos, business letters, instructions, reports. These are types of documents that you may not encounter in other places, in other types of workplaces. And so we'll be specifically working on those in our class. As I've mentioned before, technical writing employs graphics and visual design to increase effectiveness. This is where we bring in woven, written, oral, visual, electronic, and nonverbal, that acronym I mentioned in our last lecture. That by using these different modes together, we can strengthen our communication to make it more engaging, more memorable, more persuasive. Increasingly, you're going to find the writing you do in the workplace being collaborative in basis. That it means you work with others to do the writing. That it's not just you alone by yourself doing the writing that's going to represent your entire company. That more than likely you're going to be working with other people, and you have to be able to sync with those people and agree on ways to address whatever problem you're trying to solve with your communication. And connected to that is that the writing that you do is going to be likely involving a global network of connections, whether it be different places that your company does business, whether it be the employees you're working with are in different places, that it's not just simply you in an office with a small group of people, that it's likely you're working with people in lots of different places, different cultures, and maybe using different languages. The writing that you do will likely be shaped by organizational conventions and culture. A really good example of this is the difference in the way that organizations present themselves in terms of like the expectations on their employees, for example. So if you were to go work at, say, I don't know, maybe Google or Facebook, and in their offices, the employees are more than likely going to not be wearing three-piece suits. They're going to be looser. The workplaces are going to be more open and bright with natural light. It may not be as serious in some regards as what we might think of as, like, say, IBM, for example, where at IBM there was like a specific dress code for the type of suit you wore, the colors that were allowed, the color of your tie, that you not wear loud and crazy socks, that you projected a certain image of the company in the way you were expected to dress. Now, over time, this has likely changed, but I think in large part there's still a kernel of truth to this, that each organization has a certain way that they create a culture for themselves, and that culture is reflected in everything they do, not just the products they make, but in the way they talk about and write about those products, and the way that they engage with others, whether it be in the workplace or with clients and users outside the workplace. And the last two that I'll mention is that you must meet deadlines. Now, as I mentioned in our class, I can be a lot more understanding because I want this to be a safe place where you're able to thrive despite everything else that may be going on outside of our class right now because of the pandemic and the fact that we're not all together. It presents different kinds of challenges, and I'm trying to be as understanding and supportive of you all as I can with that. But realistically, when you're in the workplace doing technical writing, deadlines are something that are expected to be met no matter what. And this is not just because there may be an arbitrary date saying like you got to have this done by Friday afternoon, but the reason behind that deadline may be multiple reasons. One of those might be the work you're doing, the writing you're doing is going to be given to someone that then has to take a plane, go someplace and give a talk, do a pitch, give a proposal that's going to cost you, the company might be like a windfall of money, or it might cost them a whole lot of money in lost profits. And if you don't meet that deadline, you're going to be the linchpin that breaks that chain of events that is either going to work out or not for your company. That deadline has to be met, because oftentimes the work you're doing, the writing you're doing, other people are dependent on it. And if you slow down, fall behind, you're screwing up someone else being able to do their job. And that can be a problem. And first time it happens, you may get reprimanded. But if it's something that happens a lot, it could be something that ultimately costs you your job, which obviously you don't want to happen. So make sure that you think, with like technical writing, deadlines must be met. And then another thing that we'll talk about throughout the semester is that technical writing depends in large part on both legal and ethical issues. That the writing that you do can't be something that is illegal. There may be legal standards in your industry that you're going into about what can and can't be said, how it can be said, and also your employer may have restrictions on what you can communicate out. Like you may have non-disclosure agreements and other types of preventative measures to keep certain information locked away in the organization and not revealed to public, clients, users, etc. So these are things that you have to be mindful of as well, that it's not just a free-for-all when it comes to technical writing and technical communication, that there are legal and ethical issues that also have to be considered. All right, so we're going to continue talking about this, but hopefully these ideas and these characteristics will plant some seeds in your mind that I want you to mull over, think about as we move through the semester. And we're going to be returning to them in different times through the work that we're doing. But then that brings us to the next phase of class, which is continuing to work on the 500-word summary. So for today's class, I'd ask you to have that reverse outline of the article that you found through the library databases, an article that's a scientific or technical topic. Now, I just want to give you all a reminder, because in our previous assignment I didn't ask you to reveal the source yet of where you wrote your reverse outline. But looking through some of the reverse outlines, not all, just some, but some I found questionable in terms of like how short they were, and also in terms of the subject matter. I want to make sure that you are selecting articles that are related to the work that you're studying now, what kind of career you're going to have, and also it has to come from the library databases. It can't be something that is not a journal article, okay? So as I showed you last week, there's two places I wanted you to look, either in Academic Search Complete. So if we start off at library.citytech.cuny.edu, we go to Find Articles over on the left. We can click on A, and the first place that I showed you was Academic Search Complete, right? And then the second place, which may have like more stuff for everybody in the majors that you guys represent, would be to go to the I section and then go to Ieee Explorer. I'm just waiting right now for it to log me in. Log in, I'm off campus. And again, just to remind you, with Ieee Explorer, because Ieee Explorer has a lot of sources that aren't peer-reviewed. They're things that have just been that people have presented at conferences, that show up in magazines, which those are great. I'm not saying you shouldn't read those things on your own, but we need something that's an actual peer-reviewed article, meaning that's been evaluated by a professional in the field that has that kind of background and knowledge, without knowing who wrote the original article. So there's like no favoritism at play to say this is worthy of being published, that this is very cutting-edge, top-notch research. So for my example today, I just typed in virtual reality, something I'm interested in for a while. And And now after I've typed in virtual reality, the first thing I want to do is put a check next to journals, right? Because I'm conferences, books, standards, courses, magazines, early access. I'm not interested in those things. I want something that's a peer-reviewed article from a journal. I click apply. It gives me 3,143. There's different ways I could sort this to try to find stuff. If I didn't show you guys this last time, one of the good ways to find out what is maybe valuable information is to look at what is most cited by papers. The reason being is that means a lot of other professionals thought that information in that journal article was valuable, and they quoted from it and cited it in their work. So this way, whatever is at the top of the list has been cited by more papers than those that are at the bottom of the list. And so, for example, this one article that I looked at, I'm going to show you a little bit more in a second, Finder, spelled with a P, Real-Time Tracking of the Human Body from 1997. The research that shows in it is kind of cool, and you can see like how it connects probably like with the Xbox body tracking add-on that they had for a while that's been discontinued. But you can see like how this kind of research likely fed into that work that came out later on. It's obviously 1997. It's been percolating for a long time. But when I clicked on this, click on PDF, I just took a cursory look, saw how long it was, like page 780 to 785, so 5 pages long. I see it has a lot of good descriptions and explanations, discussion, has some images showing how their product works, some of the equations they used for the computation that's taking place in this thing called Finder. So this seemed like a pretty good article to me to use for my summary, my 500-word summary. It's plenty of information for me to work with there, because it is a sufficient length that it's obviously longer than the 500 words that I need to write in my summary. And remember, the 500-word summary has a specific length, right? And related to what I said earlier about technical communication, technical writing requires deadlines. It also requires parameters. And the reason being is that when you write something, a person may have a time limit on how long they have to read the thing that you've written. There may only be limited space in the document that your writing is going to go into, like a brochure or a letter. You just can't write everything under the sun, and also you may not write too little because then you might not be giving enough information. So the word length requirement is something you'll want to pay attention to. It's very important. Now with our assignment, 500 words is what the target is, and for our purposes, I'm okay with it being 20 words over or 20 words less. That's the window that you want to land in for how long the body of your document is. And when I say body, that's like the main writing. That doesn't include the name block at the top or the memo header that I'll show you in a minute, or your references at the bottom. But you may find in the workplace that the word count might include those things. Okay? So you have to find out what are the parameters for the specific deliverable that you've been tasked to create in the workplace. This is the work that you have to do as both in your job and as well as the other hats you'll be wearing as a technical writer. All right, so I found this particular article, right? So let's see what you need to be doing right now to transform that reverse outline into your 500-word summary. So you can see here I'm using Google Docs, and let me increase the magnification. There we go. And I'm not actually I don't want you guys to think you're cross-eyed. This is a text filler that I got from a website called Lorem Ipsum. Lipsum.com. This is in publishing. Publishers use Lorem Ipsum text as filler. So like if I'm writing I'm creating a document that has 2 columns of text. I don't have that writing yet, but I want to go ahead and do the page layout. I can go to Lorem Ipsum, grab the text that I need that's just this Latin-esque type writing, and then put that into the space that the real writing, say in English, will go later on. And so I can use this to generate a certain number of paragraphs, a certain number of words, a certain number of bytes of information, a certain number of lists. So like if I say 5 paragraphs, generate Lorem Ipsum, then it gives me all this text I can just copy and paste into my document. So like this is 5 paragraphs, 505 words. So if I wanted to approximate my 500 words, I could grab this text and be able to use that as a guideline to see that how much writing there needs to be there. So I generated some of that text beforehand. And so if we can imagine, each of these is one sentence summarizing each paragraph of my article, Finder, Real-Time Tracking of the Human Body. So I got all my sentences there. Now, to begin transforming your reverse outline into your 500-word summary, there's a few things that we need to add first to the top of your document. This is going to be in a memo format. A memo is short form for memorandum, and these are documents that are intended to create memory for an organization. They could be documents that are asking someone to act on some information. It could be a way of creating you communicating a stance or a position on something within the organization that you want people to read and understand. For our purposes, I want you to just become familiar with the format right now. So let's start off. We're going to do all capitals to, say, Professor Ellis, from. This is where you'd want to write out your first and last name. Next, we want to give the date, and what we want to think of is when your 500-word summary is due, because we don't want an early date. If like the deadline is a certain date, that's the day we want to have the date on our document. So if I go back to the syllabus, I can see post final draft of 500-word summary to Open Lab. That's due by next week. That means it's going to be due by Wednesday, March 3rd. So I'm going to put in date, March 3rd, 2020. Subject. And then the subject for this is 500-word summary of article about X. In this case, I'll say about virtual reality. The idea is here, just choose what's the main thing that your article is referencing about. I know some folks had like reverse outlines of things involving iPhones. You would want to say, what is the specific thing is that article about relating to iPhones? iPhone security, iPhone cameras, iPhone whatever. Because it's more than likely not something about iPhones in general. So put that into your subject, but begin with 500-word summary of article about whatever it is. Then we want to skip an extra line, and just so this looks more accurate to what yours will look like, let's change line spacing to single. And then also format custom spacing for this. And of course this will be different if you're using Word or Apple Pages or another word processor, LibreOffice. Apply. There we go. So now everything's single spaced. To, from, date, subject. I skip a line and then I begin the body of my summary. And I have all these single sentences that are describing each individual paragraph in my article. But you can see I've also added one quote from my article that I would like you to find in your own article that you want to use. And I'll show you how to incorporate that into your summary. You know, some sentence that gives some statement of fact or something interesting about the topic that's being discussed that you feel is important to include in the author's own words. This would be something we want to quote. So we'll get to that in a second. So just to start off, we need to say at the very beginning of the summary, you know, what is this document about? And you could start off by saying, the following is a 500-word summary of a peer-reviewed article about tracking human bodies in virtual reality. So here I'm giving a little bit more description than what I put in the subject, because the subject is simply just to give a person an idea about what's going on. But once they begin reading this, the first sentence, that's the topic sentence of everything that follows. And everything that follows is a summary of this article about the specific thing. And so you give a little bit more detail about what that specific thing is in this first sentence of your 500-word summary. Now the next sentence, you want to provide a roadmap for what follows in your summary. And in this case, we could say that the authors discuss the we'll say the body tracking software that they developed called Finder by explaining, or how about we'll say by showing how the software was developed, tested, and evaluated. Or we might say, and again, I'm having to refer back to the article to think about like, what exactly did they talk about. And so tested, and we'll say improved. Now, these three things that I mentioned here, this is my roadmap, because what I want in my summary are groupings of those three things that correspond to what I've offered in my roadmap. Your roadmap is going to be based on the article that you've read. It's probably not going to look like that. So you have to return back to the article, return back to your reverse outline, and think, okay, what are the main points that the author is making or authors are making? And those main points or main sections of the document will be what gives you your roadmap. Now, after you've got those two sentences written, Now you can begin bringing all of the sentences you wrote in your reverse outline into the body of your document. And what I would suggest at a first pass is to bring all the sentences in. Because I know some of you have some reverse outlines that are probably more than 500 words, and others of you have ones that may be close to 500 words and others that are shorter than. And so go ahead and bring all those sentences together and then read them one by one, pausing after you read one. I would recommend reading it aloud. It actually helps you process the information better when you read it aloud rather than reading it silently to yourself, so that you can think about how to incorporate that sentence into your summary so that your summary flows, that it has what we call a unity of thought that threads everything together in your summary. Because you may find some of these sentences from your reverse outline may not be necessary. They may not be useful to helping someone understand the overall thing that your article is about. So those sentences can be chunked out. Don't worry about keeping them. Keep those sentences, edit those sentences that are relevant to someone reading this and understanding the main idea contained in the article that you're summarizing. That you don't have to try to incorporate everything. I don't expect you to do that, and that's not a good summary if it's addressing everything. It needs to address what are the main points being discussed in the article that you found. Now, as an addition to this reverse outlining you've done, I think it would strengthen your summary to include at least one quote. And that would be a direct quote from the article that it could be like a definition. It could be a concrete description of something that they're talking about that's important to the overall understanding of the article. And so you see here, I found this one sentence from my article, quote, "To address this need, we have developed a real-time system called Finder, Person Finder, that substantially solves the problem for arbitrarily complex but single-person fixed camera situations." Now, I got that quote there, but now I'm going to format it using APA format to show where it comes from and also to make it flow into my writing better. So in my case, I may begin with just saying, according to the authors, comma, space, and then I give the quote. "To address this need, we have developed a real-time system called Finder," etc. Now, at the end here, this is something we need to fix. And as I've mentioned before, and I'll mention again, we're going to be using the Purdue OWL APA website to help us with this. There are a lot of other websites that help, but the Purdue OWL is like top-notch. So I can just simply go to Google and type in Purdue OWL APA. Okay, just go to Google, type in those three words, Purdue OWL APA. Very first link, Purdue Online Writing Lab OWL APA General Format. So on this page, navigation's over on the left, just like our Open Lab site. We have access to all the main information we need about using APA. Now, for us right now, we need to look at in-text citations, because what we're dealing with is a quote. A quote is in text, meaning the body of your writing, in text of the body of your writing. Excuse me. So we'll click that, and it gives us examples of work by two authors. Well, let's look back over at my article. How many authors we have? Christopher Richard Wren, 1. Ali Azbejani, 2. Trevor Darrell, 3. Alex Paul Pentland, 4. We got 4 authors on this one article, meaning they collaboratively wrote this article together. So I go back to Purdue OWL. a work by 3 or more authors. And so what they suggest is list only the first author's name followed by et al., period. What this means in Latin is et alia, and the others. But notice et, that is literally the word and in Latin. So we don't put in a period after that. But alia is abbreviated to al, so we put a period after it. So they give an example here, Kernus et al. Period, comma, and then the date that that article was published. So what we need to do is we go back to the article, who's the first author? Christopher Richard Wren, W-R-E-N. So I'll go into my Google Doc, and what I'm going to do is type in Wren et al. Period, space. Then they give the date. But now there's a problem here. These types of citations that they're giving us here are for paraphrasing. We're giving a quotation, so I want to include the page number for that particular work so someone can go immediately to where that quotation comes from. And so here we can actually see where they give us an example of this when they're talking about citing indirect sources. Because they're going to be giving a quote here. And so I can see after the year, comma, P period, space, and then the page number. So I'm going to go back to my document. Oh, and I forgot what the date was, so I need to put that as well. I see at the top, 1997. So 1997, comma, period, space, 780. So we have Wren, first author that's listed, et alia, al period, comma, space, 1997, year that it was published, comma, space, P period, space, the page number, 780. And all this is in parentheses. But now notice where I put the period here. That's not where we want the period. This is a sentence. And periods go at the end of the sentence. Your citation is part of the sentence. So I'm going to get rid of that period inside the quotation mark, and I'm going to move it to the end after the closed parentheses on my citation. So we got, according to the author's, comma, quote, end quote, space, parentheses, Wren et alia, comma, date, comma, P period, space, 780, close parentheses, period. Make sure you have this right spacing here. You always have a space after a comma, so make sure you have those there. You have spaces after periods for this abbreviation here, P period, but with an abbreviation that comes before a comma, no space. Okay, I know there's some exceptions there to pay attention to, but this attention to detail is also what we have to work at as being technical writers. So since we've got that, I'm actually going to move that quote to the beginning of my summary, because it says what the product is it's talking about, Finder, with a P. So then I can bring up the rest of my sentences. I go through them one by one to make sure they make sense, that as I'm reading them, one flows into the next. You might have to edit some of these sentences so that the writing flows, that it doesn't sound like it was written by a robot, okay? That takes a little bit of work, that you're trying to massage the sentences so that they can flow from one to the next, so it makes sense that one point leads to the next. Now, finally, we need to include a reference at the end of the article. So you see I have the memo block at the top, to, from, date, subject. I have the body of my summary there. And then at the very bottom, I'm going to add a title that says reference. and then I'll skip a line, and underneath that is where I want to write my reference for this particular article. So they give us an example, and again, I went to the Purdue OWL website, so let me go back over there and show you where I got this example. We're getting these sources from journals. Journals are periodicals, so reference list, see, articles and periodicals. Click that. So they give us a general guide for what it should look like here at the top. But sometimes it helps me to see a real example of like an actual reference. And so they have article and print journal. We're looking at print journals, but they're in an electronic database. So let's look for article and electronic journal. And so I chose this example here, Bonilla and Weech, Data and Experience Design. But notice it only shows 2 authors there. My article has 4 authors. So I go back to this general guide at the top of the page, and you can see how it gives a comma between first author, second author, comma, then an ampersand, and then the third author. So that's the model I'll use for my many authors on my article. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that up just to use it to look at as I'm writing my reference. You can do that too. Copy and paste it into your document. Gene, delete it later. We're not going to leave it in there. But just so that we have it to work with, it'll make our job a little bit easier. So here, you can see I copied and pasted the names of the authors of the article I chose. I want mine to look like this. So all I'm including is the last name and the first initial, or the initials, because you include both initials. So I'm going to do Ren, comma, C period, R period, comma. Then Azar Bejani, comma, A period, comma. Then Daryl, comma, T, comma. And now this will be the last person, so I'll give the ampersand, Pentland, comma, A, P. And I look at the example, S period, and then a space. So I'll give a space. So that's all my authors, so I can get rid of those now. I'm going to get rid of those, right? It wants to give the year, so I will say, in parentheses, 1997. See, I'm getting that from right down here. Then I give a period and a space. See, 2019 period space. Now here is the title of the article, but notice only the first word in each part is capitalized. Everything else is lowercase. So here's the title of my article. So let's put that in. Actually, I can cut that. Finder, colon. So Finder has a capital P, colon. Real should be capitalized, but these words that come after should all be lowercase. And then a period. So I got my title. Now we want to give, with normal capitalization, the title of the journal. So I'm going to do IEEE. Now notice mine is all caps. That's not right. I need mine to look like this. Now IEEE, that is an acronym for the organization, so it would be all capital letters, IEEE. But these other parts should only have the first letter capitalized, except for these prepositions and conjunctions. There's an easy way for me to fix this in Google Docs, and also there's similar ways in Microsoft Word. I can go Format, Text, capitalization, I'm going to change to title case. Transactions, but I still need to fix on, and I still need to fix and. Those should be lowercase. But the rest of these are correct. So I'm going to put a comma after that, so mine looks like theirs. There's a comma right there. And then I'm going to italicize my title. I select the title, Control-I, Command-I on a Mac. So what's next? I need to give the volume number and the issue number. So volume 19, then in parentheses 7. Notice there's no spaces there, comma, then you give a space, and you save what page numbers it's on. 780-785. Then I give a period, and then you can see it's asking for a DOI number, a link to the information on the DOI website. Document, DOI. Digital Object Identifier. So we need the Digital Object Identifier number, but let me show you this. So if I go back to our search results, you can see here the article. It doesn't show me the DOI right here, so I'm going to click on the title for the article rather than that PDF link. And you see it gives me a link here with the DOI information, but look here at the bottom of the page. When I mouse over that, look here at the very bottom left. You can see that the URL includes, after DOI-org, it includes the CityTech proxy that allows us to access the databases from off campus. citytech.easyproxy.cuny.edu. I know it's very small down there, but that's bad. We don't want that. So I'm just going to select the DOI number 10.1109/34.598236. Copy that, because that's all I really need. And then I'm going to put that at the end. And in front of it, I'm going to put the right URL, which is the https://doi.org/ and then the number that I just pulled from the database. That's the correct link. With that proxy stuff that's added in when we access the databases offline, it screws up things so that if we use that link and publish this, someone else can't just click it and go there. It's not going to work for them because they're not, at CityTech and they don't have a CityTech login. So we need to give them the right URL to help them find things, and that's why we have to manually put in https://doi.org/ whatever that DOI number is. So after we've got that, we have our complete APA entry. So I'm going to get rid of the example after I've double checked everything. And so now I got my reference and then the reference underneath there. I'm going to zoom out just a little, let you see this. Maybe I can do 100%. Yeah. So to, from, date, subject. Then I have my summary here. Then I have the word reference. If I had multiple references, I would use the word references. But there's only a single reference, so I'll just say reference. And then after that, I have my APA formatted bibliographic reference. And so your goal between now and next week is to transform your reverse outline into a draft of what your 500-word summary should look like. Again, try to hit that 500-word mark as close as possible. You can go up to 520 words or as low as 480 words. So I'm giving you a 20-word window on either side of 500 words. And depending on which word processor you use, you can quickly find what your word count is. Like with Google Docs, I select the body of my writing. I can then go to Tools, go to Word Count, and I can see how many words just what I selected are of the total. All I'm concerned about is what the body of your summary is. So that number right there is how many words my summary is. So I obviously have a lot more writing to do to get it up to 500 words. As a part of your summary, I want you to include one citation, quoted piece of text that's in text cited, as I showed you how to do here. Okay? So I give some introduction in my own words, according to the authors, according to Wren et al., or the authors argue that, comma, quote. So there's a lot of different ways you can introduce that, but don't just put the quote in there without any introductory words. Your words, this phrase at the beginning, integrates their writing into what you're writing. So it's important to include something like that, an introductory clause. You give that comma, space, and then your quote, no punctuation inside the end quote, space, and then give your parenthetical citation, Wren et al., period, comma, date, comma, p period, space, and whatever the page number is. So this is something I want you to come back to. You can review you multiple times so you can see what this should look like. And then you're going to be sharing this with your team that I'll be assigning you next week for peer review. So watch for those emails probably closer to next lecture, so you know who you're going to be working with and can begin sharing your work as soon as possible so that everybody has plenty of time to read your work and then provide you feedback. And I'll tell you more about how to do that in next week's lecture. Right now, focus on getting a draft done of your 500-word article summary. And again, make sure your article is coming from Academic Search Complete or Ieee Explorer, and it's a peer-reviewed article, not something that's too short, doesn't have enough substantive material for you to work with, and that it's of a scientific or technical subject. So that brings us to homework. So what I'll have you do is you're going to turn your article summary outline into your 500-word summary draft. I don't need to see that, okay? You're going to hold on to that, but you need to have it ready for next week when we do peer review, so that as soon as I send out those group assignments, you will be ready to reply to that and share your draft with your team members, okay? Then you're going to have your weekly writing assignment separate from that. Now with your weekly writing assignment, I'll post this on our Open Lab site for your respective section. And the way that it's going to look is at the very top of your Open Lab site, I'll have the lecture. It's going to say, comma, week 2. And then underneath that will be weekly writing assignment, week 2. And for this new weekly writing assignment, I want you to write about the process of how you found your article for the 500-word summary project. Like, what did you do? Like, what was the keywords you were looking for? Which databases did you look in? Did you look in both of them? Did you only look in one? How many articles did you browse through before you picked one? And then after you've talked about how you found that particular article, I want you to spend a few sentences describing how someone could follow particular steps to find the specific article that you chose. Like, how would you tell someone to do that? What is the first step to do? What is the second step to do? First step, you could say open a web browser. Go to library.citytech.cuny.edu. Click on search for articles. Guide them through each individual step. And that part, you can make it as a list. You could write it in sentences. It could be a paragraph with a bunch of just statements separated by commas. I'm not being too picky. What I'm more concerned about with that part is seeing you think through how instructions work, how to tell someone to repeat a process that you've already established. The process you established was how to find that article you used. Now show someone else how to do that. So the first part of your weekly writing assignment is I want you to reflect a little bit about how you chose that article. Then the second part, I want you to tell someone how to find that specific article you chose. Okay? However that might be. So you'll have all week to work on these things. If you have questions, make sure you email me, jellis@citytech.cuny.edu. Remember, I have office hours Wednesday from 3 to 5. The link is on our syllabus at the very top. And if you can't meet during office hours and you have a question, email me with your availability over like a week, and I'll find a time where we can both meet, whether it be on Google Hangouts or Zoom, somehow that we can get together and we'll put our minds together. Okay? So good luck. I want everybody to be staying healthy, safe. And again, if anything comes up, you need my help with something relating to the class, just let me know, because I'm here for you all. But a large part of that is like you got to let me know when and how I might be able to help you. Okay? So good luck with our class and everything else you got going on. And I'll talk to you again soon.